Jane had a stuffed toy chimpanzee named Jubilee.
Jane, where are you?
She cherished Jubilee and took him everywhere she went.
Everyone had been searching for hours and hours, looking for little Valerie Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall, to me, is almost like a religious figure. The peace that she seems to carry with her, the calmness.
She has the mind of a scientist, but the heart of a poet.
Looking directly into my eyes, he very gently squeezed my fingers, which is how chimpanzees reassure each other.
This is New York Times children's book editor Pamela Paul. It's a fortuitous coincidence for young children that this spring there are 2 new picture books about Jane Goodall, the world's leading authority on chimpanzees and a tireless advocate for protecting their disappearing habitat. I spoke with the authors of both books and with Goodall, who collaborated with author and illustrator Patrick McDonnell on Me, Jane.
Well, the message I always try to get across, which is what Patrick picked up on in the book, is that, if you have a dream as a child, you should follow that dream, even if people laugh at you as they laughed at me for my dream.
Her life really shows how one person can change the world. And it started at such an early age. It was really like predestined.
Me, Jane begins with a young Goodall receiving a stuffed chimp named Jubilee as a gift. The story highlights the qualities she possessed as a little girl that would come to define her career as a scientist: patience, inquisitiveness, and a love of the outdoors.
From a very young age, I just knew I wanted to do something with animals. I didn't know what, but I was watching them and writing about them and making up stories about them.
Me, Jane even contains detailed drawings and diagrams that Goodall herself made as a child. In contrast to Me, Jane, the watcher, Jane Goodall's life with the chimps, follows her life trajectory from her native England to Gombe Park in Tanzania, Africa, where she patiently gained the trust of the chimpanzees there and discovered that they used tools and kissed and behaved more like humans than anyone had realized.
Just design-wise, the pictures at home are very small and confined. And when she finally reaches Gombe, I use full, double-page spreads, and so it just expands out. I was, trying to show, that she was finally where she wanted to be and she could let her passion flower.
I was just so taken by the little dynamo Jane as a young girl, in particular the story of her going into the chicken coop.
Both authors included the story of a 4-year-old Goodall hiding out in a chicken coop for hours. She wanted to figure out how something as big and hard as an egg could come out of a hen.
If you look back on that whole story, isn't it the making of a little scientist? Curiosity, asking questions, not getting the right answer, trying to find out for yourself, not the internet, it didn't exist back then. So doing it wrong, not giving up, and learning patience, the whole thing.
And the books that you read were also influential.
Dr. Dolittle was the first, actually, because, he was this wonderful doctor who learned the language of animals, and gosh, I wanted to do that. And then I found the books about Tarzan. I think I was somewhere between 10 and 11. And of course, it was the books. Today kids, they get it on TV.
You were outdoors all the time with a lot of free time, exploring, observing. Do you see a big difference now in the way that children lead their lives today?
Yes, a huge difference in the US and the UK especially. But, all the time is organized. So they do, after school, they do swimming, they do dancing, they do this kind of sport, they do that. And parents driving them here, there, and everywhere. We just, after school, we were on our own, we had our friends. We went out on the cliffs with my dog, and we were free.
And how important was that kind of time spent outdoors and the open-ended time to becoming a scientist?
I think it was very, very important because always I was watching and making notes and seeing the spiders carrying eggs and then babies on their backs, and watching caterpillars turn into butterflies, and watching a little plant grow. All those things were really important for me.
One of the other big concerns today, in addition to children not having the free time to be outdoors and exploring, is that girls are not interested in science, and that when you look at the number of women who pursue advanced degrees in science, it's still not as high as in other areas. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because science has come to be thought of as a rather cold, you know, like when I first went to Cambridge University, I hadn't been to college when I began the chimps. And I was told, well, you shouldn't have given the chimps names, they should have had numbers, that's more scientific. And you can't talk about them having personalities or minds or feelings because those are unique to us. So, you know, there's a perception that to be a good scientist, you must be cold and objective.
So what else do you think that parents and educators and book authors and all of us could do to help encourage girls to pursue the sciences?
You know, to be a good scientist, you should be a human being first and a scientist second, not the other way around. And, you know, so that there are certain qualities which I think are particularly pronounced in women, girls, and that is empathy and intuition.
Right.
And that this shouldn't be squashed out, that it's part of who you are, who we are. It's something that's should be very special and unique. And so the lesson is use your intuition, and from that you may get a feeling of understanding you wouldn't have otherwise. From that point, you can then test whether your feeling is right.